This is my monthly pickup from Phantom of the Addicts comics in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I get my monthly comics, which I don't get a lot of, but I also get my graphic novels, independents, anything that's been solicited through previews, I get from them. And so this is what I got. So let me just share it. First thing I got was the newest volume of Fist of the North Star. This is number 12. I unironically and unapologetically love this story. I love introspective, deep manga and comics that make you think, but sometimes you just need a really good action film, like maybe like a Mad Max Fury Road kind of thing. So far, this has still been great, and we are at issue 12. So issue 12 is the 2/3 mark. There will be 18 total volumes to be printed. Art still here is really good. Just really cool stuff. I love this black and white work. And so I'm looking forward to this. 6 more issues to go. So that means by September 2025. The price of these used to be $19.99, but because of inflation with this one, the price jumped to $25. But fortunately, the quality of the books remains the same. It's not like they raised the price and made the books cheaper or made the paper worse or skimped on a lot of stuff. They just raised the price. They got extra costs and they passed them on to the consumer. But at least the quality of the book physically is the same. So it stinks when you have to pay more, but it stinks even more when you have to pay more, like your monthly American comics, where you have to pay more and you're getting crappier paper. So at least these are still high quality, and I recommend these. Now for my monthly books, I've been collecting a lot of the, what they call Energon Universe books that are being published by Skybound through Image. This is the 4th of 5 issues for Duke. This is reestablishing G.I. Joe, the G.I. Joe villains, tying in with the Transformers. And I have no history, no nostalgia with any of these characters. I never read G.I. Joe in my life. Didn't watch Transformers. So I'm looking at it as someone in their 50s who's read a lot of comics, just unobjectively, do I like it or not? This is being written by Joshua Williamson, and actually, of all the Energon Universe books, this is by far my favorite. I think it's the most relatable. I think the characters are done really well. I just think it's a really good book. It's fun, and not every comic has to be, as I said earlier with Fist of the North Star, not everything has to be deep and introspective. Something can just be fun, and this is fun. I am enjoying this. This is a fun series. Not stupid, but just fun. Next, I have Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong. This is the 6th of 7 issues. Just trying to see how they're going to wrap up everything in 2 issues. I have not read this yet. But pretty good art. Again, this is fun stuff. And this is the Bat Megazord, which is pretty cool from a little kid. From, the little kid in me is like freaking out over this. But this should be a lot of fun. This is the issue 6 of the Transformers. What I'm going to start doing with a lot of these Energon books is I'm going to start waiting for the trades. And I know normally you're always told, oh, you should pick up the monthly issues to support the comic. But this is being published by Kirkman through his label, Skybound, through Image. This thing is selling hot, hot, hot. There is no worry that my not buying this on a monthly basis is going to in any way impact the trades being published. So I'm just going to trade wait. I'll be honest with you. Daniel Warren Johnson's been doing the writing and the art. I think he's a fine artist. I don't think he's the next coming of Jack Kirby and Neil Adams and Barry Windsor-Smith combined like a lot of people do. But I think he's good at the big explosions and the action. Although his very inky style and some of his coloring, sometimes the things get a little muddled. That's just me. I know it's an artistic choice. I think maybe with some different coloring this would be a little clearer, but but he does a good job of conveying the action. And with this type of book, it's not a Bendis book where people are sitting around the coffee table talking about what happened last issue. Should be an action book. And so the next volume, starting with issue 7, I'm going to start collecting in trade and see how that goes. This is Void Rivals. This was the first of the Energon books. This is the second season, so issues 7 through 12. I'm going to start collecting these in trade when this season ends. This has been interesting. A lot of things have not been revealed yet. Sometimes I'm touch and go on the art, but then sometimes they'll do things that I think are kind of interesting. I think the art's kind of plain. It kind of gives me post-Jim Shooter Valiant vibes sometimes. But then they'll do something like this, and it's like, oh, that's really cool. So I'm going to stick with it so far. I think it's, I'm trying to see how this is all going to tie in to the Transformers and G.I. Joe books, and what way. It was good stuff. This is issue 8 of Void Rivals. Again, very dark color palette with a lot of these Energon books, but then you have just interesting art, use of color, a lot of purples, just a lot of interesting stuff here. Okay, this is Symbiote Spider-Man 1 and 2, and the only reason I got these is because Peter David wrote them. And if you're not familiar with Peter David, he's had a long history of comics. He's the one that did the Hulk Mr. Fix-It run. He's also did a lot of Star Trek comics in the 80s that if you actually read them, they're with the original crew, they actually tie into the canon, into the lore of Star Trek very well. They're actually pretty well written stories. I'm not big on reading IP comics, but those are pretty good, and they're cheap to find. If you go to a con, they're usually getting $1 or maybe $2 bin. And a couple of years ago, I believe, he suffered from a stroke. So I'm glad that he's to the point now where he can write again. And this is really just to support him. I'm sure this is going to come out in trade because Marvel's going to come out with everything in trade. And this is also Spider-Man 2099 related story, which he was good at. I hate this slick kind of weird paper. Not a fan of it, but this is more buying the miniseries, support Peter David, because I like him that much. And I'm happy that he's well enough to keep creating comics. He's a guy that he's not going to win an Eisner, but he never makes a bad comic. They're entertaining. This was a freebie for Planet of the Apes. Actually, this is a reprint from the first miniseries that Marvel did. I actually have these stories, but if you have not read that first miniseries of the Planet of the Apes that they did early this year, you should, if you like the current lore, the current series, because it ties into that. This is Beware of the Planet of the Apes. This is a prequel to the original film that came out in 1972. I'm kind of curious as to how this is all going to tie in, but they do talk about here. They do have the intro, and they talk about how this occurs before Taylor landed on the future Earth. Written by Mark Guggenheim. Who's a pretty steady writer. So I'm kind of curious to see how this is all going to work out. But I really like this franchise, and I really like the old school franchise too. This is Cobra Commander, another one of the Energon books. This is one that I've starting to take a liking to. The comic isn't bad. Again, I don't have that nostalgia and that, little kid in me that grew up with this, that loves this stuff. But again, it's none of these comics are bad. None of these Energon comics are bad. They're entertaining. And lastly, this is Bell Ringer. And I think this is by Jacob John White. This is a self-published book, perfect binding. I found out about this from Phantom of the Addicts Facebook page. They were announcing that he was coming over for a signing, and apparently he did a tour of shops in the Northeast doing signings to promote this new book. And there was just something about the cover that I really dug. I just thought it's got something. And so I asked the store, if you can get an autographed copy for me, and just save it for me and just throw it into my polls. It just had something. And apparently the signing in Pittsburgh at Phantom of the Attic was very well attended, much better than expected. It had a really big turnout. And I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to see the independent cartoonists getting out there and getting known. I'm not sure what the story's about. I read like the first, maybe third of it, but I really enjoyed this art. And I think this is going to be one of those slow build stories where things are going to be revealed over time, which is fine with me. It shows that they've actually thought about this. And this black and white art is just really great. I really am a fan of black and white art. A lot of times I think bad coloring can kill a book, but I think a good colorist can save a book. I've seen it a lot. Like if you were look like a Frank Miller book, and you see the pencil pages and then you see the finished project, especially when Lynn Varley was doing the colors. I mean, you can tell that Lynn Varley was like the unheralded star of a lot of those, of the Dark Knight Returns and the 300. And so just someone that can just draw black and white really well like this is always something that intrigues me and then always will catch my eye. So I'm not going to show the end because I don't know if the end really spells anything because I haven't read it yet. But I just thought it was really interesting. And he is working on a second issue. It's supposed to come out in June of this year. And you can follow him on Instagram at Bellringer. I believe it's Bellringer. And there's also like a link to his personal page. And other books have been carrying this. I know Phantom of the Attic is a supporter. And I'm really happy to see, as I said, someone that's on the independents doing something really cool and unique. This cover I think got me because I just love the use of the negative space. Title, the character, little shadow, and that's it. I like when someone is smart enough and thinks enough to use negative space really effectively. I mean, it can just be done poorly, but this is just a really nice use of it. Just sticks out. This white cover with the black stripe here. Bam, bam, bam. Looks good. And it's a really pretty well made comic physically. It produced pretty well. I'd love to see the original art on this. It's probably killer. So that's it. That's all I got for this month. I do have another batch of books that'll come out in beginning like 2 to 3 weeks. From that, I'm looking forward to the Goiter trade paperback and a few other books. But that's really it. Hope you enjoyed this. And if you have any thoughts, please leave them in the comments. Thanks.